Welcome to Efficio's Transforming Public Procurement Microcast. Today, we're going to discuss the National Procurement Policy Statement and its requirements to make contracts more accessible to SMEs. I'm Andy Craig, and I'm here with Grace Tabb, a consultant from our public sector practice. So Grace, tell me, what's the intention in relation to SMEs from a policy perspective, and how does it build on the current guidance?
Sure. So hi, everyone, and thank you for having me on the series, Andy. So briefly, for those who may not be aware of the National Procurement Policy Statement, essentially it requires authorities to consider 5 priorities in exercising their functions relating to procurement. So the priorities relate to value for money, social value, small and medium-sized enterprises, commercial and procurement delivery, and skills and capability. So SMEs are obviously the backbone of our economy. They might be small, but they're often agile, creative, and entrepreneurial. So working with SMEs brings value to contracting authorities through things like innovation and social value for their local communities. As a result, authorities have a duty to support these businesses in achieving sustainable growth and open up opportunities to more SMEs to create a thriving and competitive marketplace. Essentially, we want to make sure there's a level playing field for SMEs to compete in public procurement and remove any barriers in the procurement process.
Okay, so that's interesting then. So I suppose the question there then is, how do you practically apply this policy intent throughout the commercial process?
Yeah, so I think there's probably a few points here. So firstly, there's greater transparency and accountability in public sector procurement. So that requires buyers to disclose contract details and notices during the process. And it also requires that all comms with suppliers are retained for 3 years post-award. So that sort of ensures greater scrutiny when you're awarding the contracts. The second point, I guess, is the introduction of the broader debarment policy. So that's basically a central list of suppliers who are in violation of certain regulations, and then they're excluded from bidding for contracts. And I think that could lead to more positive outcomes for businesses of all sizes. Additionally, like the NPPS adds that authorities should not place kind of onerous requirements on suppliers or use disproportionate clauses in tenders. So, for example, the Act allows SMEs now to show proof of required insurance only upon contract award, rather than during bidding. So things like that alleviate SMEs from carrying all those unnecessary costs pre-award. Another point is that the Act mandates the consideration of lots by authorities. So in principle, this caters better to SME capabilities versus kind of the rigid tendering processes and over large contracts, which kind of in practice previously discouraged SME participation. I guess beyond that, and the increased transparency, it's important to bear in mind that SMEs historically and often lack the resources and expertise that you need to navigate the public sector processes. So they can be highly complex and time intensive, and SMEs often don't have the resources to cope with those. But sort of overall, I do think the new Act gives us a lot of reasons to be optimistic. The more open the process, the more it will help the SMEs to understand the decisions and hopefully bid more successfully going forward.
Thank you, Grace. I think that breakdown's really practical and presumably just as interesting to SME bidders as it is to public sector buyers. So I hope you all enjoyed today's microcast. Please keep the discussion going in the chat. And as always, reach out if there's any future topics that you'd like us to discuss by messaging Grace and myself. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.